Hey everybody, it's your girl Crystal, and we are back for a Queen Conversation. Listen, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your continuous support, and for those who are here for the first time or returning but you have not subscribed yet, make sure that you click the link below. Don't forget, we are on Spotify for those who don't want to watch but just want to listen. We would love to hear from you. We hope that it's been great content so far, and we love you. So let's get into it. All right, y'all. We are on a relationship kick right now, right? Why? Because it's springtime. Y'all know what happens in spring. Everybody get a little hot and the hormones start to go. But we are still supposed to live by kingdom principles and do things God's way. So today I want to talk about something that we all do to a degree, but we don't really talk about. Last time we talked about faith, right? Having the right faith to wait, how sometimes, there's someone who comes into our life and we think they're the right person and it turns out that they're not, and how we have to shift our faith to be in the promise keeper versus the promise, just so that we don't delay from that perspective. But there is another side. There is another side. And so I was talking to one of my girls, and we were talking about what happens when that relationship we had faith in doesn't go right. Like when it fails, what happens? And if we're honest, sometimes instead of taking time to heal, we will take the next bait that comes our way. I hate to say it that way, but we know it's true, right? We like and it never fails. Like the next person that comes is they're not half the person. Like if the person we were dealing with was a standard here, we've gone lower. We've gone lower, right? And I like to think that what the enemy sends us is two different categories, because it does say, the word says he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So we can't discount that, although yes, there is an element of choice and things like that, that there isn't someone, an enemy, working in the background to pull us off track, right? Or further off track, if you will. So I think that there are two categories of people. I think you have the suave, and this is for men or for women, right? Where they don't necessarily have everything. There might be some red flags, but whatever they're doing is either what the person before didn't have. So like they're filling that gap, or where you felt like your love tank was empty. Or they're just so overt in their love, right? Love bombing you, that it's hard to kind of like disregard or deny their affections, because you're like, oh wow, especially after rejection, right? Like after rejection, the one thing you want is somebody to see you and to make you feel special and to tell you how much they love you or they care, all these good things, right? So you have that one, which can be dangerous, but also equally dangerous is the person you would never date. Like, can we talk about it? We get, and again, male or female, we get these opportunities. We have people who finally decide or get the courage, to say something to us. And it's not necessarily that we're not attracted to them, but we know from the bat who we would be serious with, who, we're super attracted to, all of that. This person can be attractive, but based on personality, maybe, how they carry themselves, the things that they're into, something about them wouldn't necessarily make them number one on your roster. Sometimes it can be the physical thing, but this is someone who we feel is a non-threat. So you have the threat who is like rocking your socks off. You're like, oh my God. And then you have this person on the other end who is not really threatening. So what happens, right? If our faith isn't in God, if we're not looking at him, if we get lost in the sauce of the rejection and how we feel, if we don't have wise counsel, like really wise counsel, not just like our homegirls or homeboys, but like people that are going to say, like, you don't need to date right now. Like, that was bad. It really hurt your feelings. Like, this is, you may not be thinking clearly. You might not want to date right now. We need people like that in our corner so that we don't make these mistakes. But if you don't have those elements, if you're not talking to God and opening your heart about everything, then this is a place where the enemy really can bring either of these types in your life to what? Steal, right? Sometimes it's not that he's destroying something, but if I can delay your promise, if I can delay you walking into the fullness of your purpose and the marriage that God has for you, I've still done my job, right? Because that means that to a degree, there's still a level of purpose and influence and outreach that you're not going to have, because you can't have dominion separately. He never said that. He said have dominion, right, after the covenant part. And so he's slick like that to know I don't always have to destroy. I can just steal. I can steal your time. I can steal your healing. I can steal your wholeness. I can steal your confidence, right? And a major way to do that is through these relationships. And so this is what we were talking about. My friend had just kind of broken up a couple months ago, and I was like, just wait, right? But the next person that came, they were non-threatening. They were not first choice or any of those things. And at the end of it, thankfully, she's a God-fearing woman, and, she went back to God about it. But what happened? She lost a month. She legit lost a month. And it could have been more than that, because what does a counterfeit do, right? They will always somehow get you to continue to come off the track that God has for you, right? So whether it's the triple threat, right, that's rocking your socks off, or the unthreatening person, what ends up happening is, because you're not equally yoked, because this isn't really the person for you that God has designed for you, somewhere in their own self, and maybe some of it is influenced, who knows? But somewhere in there are going to be moments where you're going to have to choose whether you're going to compromise and go down this slippery slope, or whether you're going to stand firm with God. And a lot of times, in order to stand firm, that means you can't be in this situationship or that relationship. It's not going to work. And so what do? We're already hurting. We already want love. We've already still licking our wounds from this last situation. We're already in our own minds trying to prove to ourselves that we're worthy, prove to ourselves that they missed out. Can anybody relate? We're trying to do all these things. We are basking in this love bombing that's happening because we're hurt and because we're depleted, and that we don't realize, like, I'm not reading my Bible like I was. Or now I'm skipping out on church. Now I'm not checking in with my accountability like I'm supposed to, because I know they're going to say something. So all the things that we had put into place while we were healing, while we were chasing after God, while we were getting established in identity and in our purpose in our single season, we begin to undo all these things with people we know aren't supposed to be here, right? Because we don't want to wait anymore. Because the last thing that happened, the last guy or the last woman that I thought I heard God say was my husband, or I thought I heard God say was my wife, it didn't turn out to be. And so what do we feel like when the inside in our mind, we're like, we'll just take it into our own hands, right? Like, I gave you a chance, God. If we're real, Lord, I gave you a chance and you didn't deliver. So now I'm going to do it, right? Or I just feel more comfortable doing it myself because I'm used to being in charge and all of that good stuff. And all that leads to is disaster. Listen, y'all, I'm a living witness. When I came out of my long relationship, I told God, Pop, you got a year. I'm going to give you a year. And I wasn't saying it in a sense of like, I'm trying to like barter with God, but I have never been single more than, I think, 3 weeks before this long 5 years. Help me, Holy Spirit. So to say, Lord, I'm going to give you a year was more of a like, Okay, I'm really committing because I could be in a relationship in a month. But I just said, Lord, you brought me out of this situation. Like, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to give you a year. I'm not going to date anybody for a year. I'm going to take this time to heal. I'm going to take this time to find out who you are. I'm going to take this time to find out who I am outside of this relationship, because I had been in it for so long, y'all. Like, when you enter these relationships in your early 20s and they carry you to your 30s, you in a season where you should have had the freedom to figure out what you like, what you don't like, who you are, what I like to wear. I want to travel 80 million places to find I like some places or I don't. Like the friendship groups that shift and all of those things, like that's a time where you're supposed to discover. And when you're in a relationship that takes you through that whole time, you're not discovering, especially from a woman's perspective. What are we called to be? Submissive. We're called to be helpmates. So as a helpmate, even if you're not in a Christian or biblical relationship, you're still going to fall into that realm of helping because it's our nature. And so what you will find is, in a time period where you're supposed to get to know yourself more and discover yourself more, you're not. You're helping to build someone else's dream. You're helping someone else to heal. You're doing all these things with the focus on someone else instead of yourself. And so that's what I did. So my 20s are gone, and now I'm in my 30s having to rebuild from the bottom up and really discover, outside of a relationship, who am I now? I'm not the girl that went in. I'm a whole grown woman at this point. So who am I? Who am I outside of what they like to see me wear, or how they like to see me have my hair, or the places they like to go? Like who is Crystal alone? And so that was my time to do that. And so I said, God, I'm gonna give you a year. Let me tell you how tricky the enemy is, y'all. When I tell y'all, it was less than a week to a year anniversary is when I got 1 week. I was 1 week short. I was 1 week short. And if I'm honest, I needed more time than that. Like, that was just the beginning. I really needed more time, but I allowed myself in that moment because I'm hurt still from this previous relationship. I already was feeling dry in the sense of I'm not getting the love that I desire, or if you're thinking about love languages, it's not coming in the way that I wanted anyway. So I'm already thirsty, literally, for love. And then I'm in this weird, uncomfortable place that I've never been, where God's pulling up some things. He's showing me pieces about myself, which is already uncomfortable. And I've been single for longer than I ever have been, which is, it just was too much for my brain to fathom. So I was like, what is this? Right? And so people come along and, they're better than before, and they're giving you certain things, not necessarily, physical or material, but they're feeding those parts of you that are empty. And what you find, and what I found, is over time my zeal for God began to go. I began to compromise the time and the commitments that I had made to God in certain areas. Now we're not spending as much time. I'm compromising with my group. I'm not keeping up with them like I'm supposed to. Just all these things, right? And after a while, anything that's not built on God, it's gonna fall, right? It's gonna fall. So what happens when rubber meets the road? And I like to believe God was just like, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. You committed to me. We're not doing this. This is not my plan. We're not doing this. things fall apart. And a lot of times when we get in these situations quickly and we don't see the red flags until later, that's when we start asking God for help. And listen, God's a gentleman, so he's not going to bust in. But best believe once you open your mouth and you be like, God, I need help, he coming right in, you hear me, and busting it all up. And so once I started being like, Lord, what's happening? Like, I need you to tell me if this is for me or not. Yeah, it was going down fast. It went downhill so fast. Like gasoline was on that mug. Like the flames was going. And so what did that do? Right? I say all of this to say, what did that do? It took me another year to heal. So the healing that I was already going through from the first long relationship, now I have something else tacked on top. Like now I have another situation where the enemy is using to reinforce how I already feel rejected, right? Where he's reinforcing things that men had said about me, or even boys, because we still remember the things that people say about us in high school and middle school, right? So you're reinforcing in my mind, because now I'm in a fragile state, about who I'm not and what I'm not, and I'm not good enough, and just all the things. And what was taken from me wasn't the promise, because that's still coming in the name of Jesus. But what was taken was time. He took my time. And so that's the part we have to be careful about. The love bombers, the ones who show up looking like the knight in shining armor, the ones who feel like they're safe because they're not people that are making us fall out in love when we see them. Both sets of people have the ability to pull you off course. And although the promise itself may not be dead, the delay is just as harmful. And that's the part we have to be careful about. And that's why I wanted to bring it up in the season. People are starting to come outside. DMs are flying, okay? And if you are a woman or a man of God who is really searching for God, as my pastor says, God is attractive. So when people begin to see that light in you, they're not going to be able to help but want to be around you. It's our job to guard that. It's our job to stay strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, right? And to remember what we're waiting for, which is an amazing promise. If you think about the virgins at the door, that parable, they were not waiting for a pauper. They were not waiting for the trash man that came on the street. Not to say that, the occupation of, janitors or anything like that is bad, but I'm just saying the caliber of the promise was a king. They were waiting for the king to open the door. And so what we're waiting for while we're in the season is for our king or for our queen to be ushered into us, not anything less than. And so we have to remain focused on the main thing and be willing to say no to the little foxes. So if you go to Song of Solomon, Song of Solomon 2 verse 15, catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes, right? What is the main theme of Song of Solomon or Song of Psalms that everybody knows? Do not awaken love until it's time. Why? Because things like this happen, because delay happens. Right? A fox isn't going to come and try to steal from a vine that isn't producing fruit. I wish I could tap on the camera right now. Let me say that again. Foxes are not coming to steal from a vine that's not producing fruit. It's just tender. It's not ready. It's not ready yet. It's almost there, but it's not ready yet. So that's why we have to be careful, because there are people around us, there are men and women around us that can see the love of God. They can see the presence of God. They can see the light of God on you. They can see that you're healing. They can see your confidence coming out. And it's attractive. It is attractive. Listen, y'all was already attractive when y'all was in the world. You're more attractive now when you're living for Christ. I'm just saying. It's true. And so what we have to make sure we do not do is forfeit our promise right when we're at the door because we're feeling lonely, or because we're over the process, or because we're just not willing to go through the part of recovery that's necessary. And oftentimes that means being alone. If you have broken up with someone, situationship or full out relationship, it's so important to take time. Go to God. Like, he's not afraid. Ask him, what did I do wrong? How did I get this wrong? I thought this was you. How did I get it wrong? And let him respond. Let him respond. And when he responds, take that like, oh, I missed this red flag. Or, oh, you know what? You're right, God. I was fantasizing about my dress 3 weeks in. I moved too fast. Whatever that thing is, or I didn't allow for wise counsel, whatever that thing is, you need to know, so for the next time you can have a better battle plan. So when the next foxes come, you know how to run them out of your wine garden, because it's, or your vineyard, because it's important. What's being built on the inside of you is beautiful, and it's worthy of the promise that God has for you. And if we're waiting, talking to myself included, that means the promise is amazing, right? He's not giving us the standard. He's not giving us just enough, as we talked about in the last video. But we have to be willing to pay the price for that. And sometimes that price is that season where you are alone, or where you're not dating, where your lifestyle doesn't look like everyone else's. But when you receive that promise, you're going to be glad that you did things the way you did. But it all starts now. It starts in a season where compromise is heavy, where the enemy dangles bait in your face left and right. IG, DMs, Facebook, TikTok. And now that we're going to be outside because it's warm, like, it is about to get real. But what are you willing to do? Like, what do you want the most? Do you want something that's going to temporarily satisfy you, but cause you heartache in the end and cause you to go back into a season of recovery? Or would you rather wait and fast for a little bit relationally, so that you can walk into that kingdom marriage that he has for you in his Kairos time, versus having to come around again? Y'all, think about the children of Israel. They had to go around again. Why? Because they weren't ready. Their mindset was not ready. They weren't ready to do the hard work. So they had to go around again. I'm not going around again. I'm not doing it. Listen, these 5 years, I done paid my dues. I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing it again. It's not worth it. And so I just want to encourage you guys. I want you to know that God is not cruel. And so if he's having you wait, it's not because he's punishing you. He wants to make sure you're not just ready to walk in, but to dominate and really steward the relationship. So what does that require? It means that not only do I need you to know what a red flag looks like in order to establish a relationship, but I need you to heal enough that you're not being a red flag to someone in a relationship. I need you to heal enough that you can hear my voice, so that when you're angry or you're starting to get offended, you can hear me give you instructions to diffuse a situation versus escalate it. I need you to hear my voice because the next person might be more savvy. The enemy studies us. He knows what we like. He knows what we like, and he's got to ante up the more we learn. And so the next person's red flags might not be right there in front of your face. But guess who knows everyone's heart? God does. And so we have to know his voice enough to be able to hear when he's saying this ain't the one. We have to trust him enough to let go when he says it. We have to learn our value enough to say whether we feel like you are the greatest love bomber ever, or whether you are a non-threat, like it's not worthy of what's being built on the inside of me. I know who I am and I know what I carry. And what the only person I'm going to allow to come alongside me is someone of the same caliber. Remember, kings and queens didn't marry outside of royalty. Why? Because it would diminish the legacy, and it could also put them up, or their children up, for debate in terms of who was to take over later, because there were other bloodlines who would have stronger legacies because they did not allow the bloodline to be compromised. So yes, there were a few that had mistresses and all of that, but a lot of those relationships, the children that came after, they did not get the throne. Their lineage was not straight, and they did not continue down in order as they should have. A lot of times they were contested and they were killed. And so that is not what God wants for us. So it's about us, but then it's not about us, it's beyond us. And so we have to think about that. You are a king and you are a queen. That's why God is doing the things that he's doing in front of you and behind the scenes. The word says that you are a royal diadem in the hand of our God. And that's in Isaiah 62. So if that is how God perceives you, who are these random people just because we're feeling some type of way to take hold of you? They don't even have the qualifications to care for you the way that God is caring for you. So I just want to encourage everyone as we go into the spring and as we go into the summer. Listen, I get it. Your homegirl's waiting with you, okay? I get it, but you have to resolve within yourself that you're not going to allow the little foxes to spoil the vine, so that you're not in this perpetual season of recovery, and so that the enemy is not causing you delay. And remember that the faith part has to be in the promise keeper and not the promise. And so when you begin to know that for yourself, when you begin to remember that God is faithful and he's not going to call us to something and then downgrade us when he says no or not yet, like whatever he has is exceeding and abundantly more than we can ask, think, or imagine, then what I'm waiting for is exemplary. What I'm waiting for is going to be the same caliber of man or woman that God is building in me. And that's worth waiting for. That's worth waiting for. So be encouraged. Stay strong. Please make sure you have your wise counsel. Have someone who is also running for God just the way that you are, who you allow to speak in your life and say, hey girl, like you just stopped talking to so-and-so 2 months ago. You need to chill. Or guy, like, now you know she ain't no good for you, blah, blah, blah. Like whatever that is, make sure that you have an advisor in your ear that can speak life into you and that you can trust. So even when you feel like it sucks or it's not what you want to hear, you know that they have your best interests at heart. There is no king, there is no queen that has ever ruled that did not have a council of advisors. And the word itself says, in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. So make sure you have those people that are Christians, biblically based, seeking God, right? Equally yoked with you, that you allow that space to speak into your life, to give you the truth, to pray for and with you, and walk out this journey of singleness to marriage. Listen, I hope this was helpful, y'all. I promise I understand. I always tell people sometimes when they see me, when you are living for God, it's not that I can't be in a relationship. I'm choosing not to. So I get it. I'm just choosing to wait on the promises that God has for me versus what I've done in the past, which was compromise or take something that was lesser than. So be encouraged. Know that his best is coming. It's coming for you. Man and woman of God, it is coming for you. He is faithful, and when you receive that thing, all the other suitors, all the other offers that were on the table, they're not going to mean anything. You're not even going to bat an eye. So stay encouraged, stay faithful to God. Remember your worth. and what caliber of woman and man are waiting for you. And keep praying for them while you're waiting. That helps to just continue to establish your faith, and you're sowing seeds in the spirit, which is just as important, because if you're struggling, more than likely, guess what? They have people who are looking at them who desire to be with them too. And so remember, in those moments when I struggle the most, or I'm feeling down, those are opportunities to pray for my future husband, so that if he's having those moments where he wants to give up, or where he's feeling discouraged, or any of those things, that whether he knows it or not, there's a woman of God interceding and sending angels on his behalf, sending wisdom, or, just all those things, so that he is fortified in the spirit. So keep that in mind too. Journal, write letters, whatever you have to do to stay encouraged. But just know that God's going to make it all work out for your good. If he can bring an entire people into a land flowing with milk and honey, who were slaves and didn't know how to fight, if he can set them up to take an entire land, and completely shift their identity, he can do this for us. It's a cakewalk for him. So be encouraged. Until next time. Bye.